Welcome to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke. Democrats are desperately trying to catch up with Republicans' media dominance, and their best attempt appears to be California Democrat Gavin Newsom, who has started a new podcast.
Here he is with MAGA leader Steve Bannon.
I think that's a lesson that we learned after President Trump. And look, we disagree on this, but President Trump won the 2020 election, and we were kind of shattered as a movement when he left Washington, D.C., and we had to go back to basics to say, it can't be somebody else do something. We had to do something. And that's where we went back to really a pure populist movement to go at the grassroots, the precinct strategy, and kind of rebuild ourselves from there.
Well, and I appreciate the notion of agency, that we're not bystanders in the world. It's decisions, not conditions, that determine our fate and future.
And here is how they ended their conversation.
Bright future.
Hey, Steve, I really enjoy this conversation. I think it's incredibly valuable, and I appreciate the spirit to which we were able to engage, and I hope we can continue the conversation, and I hope we get out of this week without any further disruptions. It's been a hell of a beginning of administration, and I appreciate your advocacy. I also appreciate that you call balls and strikes as it relates to what you're seeing with the administration.
I also think that for your audience, there's a saying that there are decades in which nothing happens and there are weeks in which decades happen. We're living in that time right now. So whatever happens this week, next week, it's going to be quite intense. We have an economy to turn around geostrategically. The beginning of the kinetic part of the Third World War has got to be stopped. So we're living history every day, and I'm just honored you had me on here, and we were able to conduct this in some level of decency.
I appreciate it, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
So I thought I was going to absolutely hate Gavin Newsom having a podcast, mostly because the last thing we need as a civilization is yet another podcast. Like, everyone has. What is the average number of podcasts we all have? Like 17 or something?
Yeah, it's probably similar to like the amount of guns the average American has.
Yeah. We're armed to the teeth, and we like to express our views in podcast form. And we saying this as total hypocrites because we all own
us?
So many guns, and also so many different
guns and so many shows,
platforms for us to speak. That said, and also I don't like Gavin Newsom. I find him kind of loathsome. His COVID governance is very bad and hypocritical. California's been run into the ground. All that aside, that's kind of interesting. They had a kind of interesting conversation. The Charlie Kirk one was kind of interesting, and it was very easy to listen to.
I know. It's weird. I also thought that I was
you agree?
Yeah, I do actually. I thought I was going to hate it. And look, we are two shows that we do together.
Yeah.
Are left-right crossover shows. In this case, it's a populist right libertarian crossover. And we debate issues, but we do it civilly and respectfully. And that's kind of what's happening on Gavin Newsom's podcast, of all places. I think from a political strategy, it's really smart too. And I've said this repeatedly over the past week, because you have Charlie Kirk immediately in the intro to that podcast taking a dig at Gavin Newsom for shutting down the state during COVID. And Gavin Newsom just laughs it off and moves on. And if there's going to be 4 years of him doing this on the podcast, he's going to effectively nullify all of the critiques of him, because he can say, I already addressed this on the podcast, or we've moved on from that. Blah, blah, blah. And he gets, I saw this take on Twitter, I apologize, I forget who to give credit to, but they were pointing out that he's also going to get experience debating and talking his way out of these issues. So he's going to have 4 years of practice before a 2028 presidential run, learning how to run to the middle and do so effectively in a way that basically neuters these conservative critics that he's bringing onto his show. So in that sense, I think it's actually incredibly smart.
And they're also just going to become a little bit more friendly toward him, it's just human to do that. It's just human to do that. So many Democrats and people in progressive media these days are saying it's becoming just such a almost annoyingly common phrase. We need our own Joe Rogan, blah, blah, blah. But the truth of that is they do need some kind of popular, in with the new information ecosystem format that can make someone on the Democratic side likable to a general audience. And I never would have said Gavin Newsom is the right choice for that, but so far he is demonstrating that he might be. He is, yes, doing all the things you're exactly describing. John Fetterman has blazed this trail a little bit. Now, he does have a somewhat more conservative or Republican actual voting record, although it's a little bit overstated how much he actually deviates from the Democratic Party. He deviates in terms of his rhetoric massively, and that has raised his popularity in his state among Republicans significantly, such that he'd go from it being a toss-up to a greater level of comfort when he has to stand for re-election. And that is smart and something Democrats should do. So, I think this is transparently Gavin Newsom setting himself up for a run for president in the future, and it will be a major advantage. It will also make kind of lefty woke people mad at him in a way that is good. Yeah. That is ways good for him. Because then there will be conservative media talking about how he's being attacked by the left, which makes him more sympathetic with progressive woke left people, whose political instincts are bad and should be ignored at every turn in order to better your standing.
And there's something ironic about that too, because the left wing of the party is the one that has in large part been clamoring for the left's Joe Rogan. But what they clearly don't understand about Joe Rogan is that he does what Gavin Newsom is trying to do on his podcast, which he does talk to people across the political spectrum. He'll have Bernie Sanders on his show one day and Donald Trump the next, and he is talking to members of the staff at X and Facebook, and then talking to people who are very skeptical of big tech, and really running the gamut on conversations on all sides of the political spectrum. Gavin Newsom sitting down with conservatives who the left is crying, oh, you can't give a platform to Nazis and all this other nonsense. Well, that's what makes people like Joe Rogan, Theo Von, et cetera, actually quite popular. The one thing that obviously does not work in Gavin Newsom's favor is he is a part of the Democratic establishment, and he is an elected official.
Yes.
And those independent podcasts are really refreshing and appealing to people because they're people talking about political and cultural issues that are not actively engaged in politics in really a meaningful way. And so it feels more real and authentic. If you have a politician doing it, I'm not sure that it carries really the same weight in terms of culture that it does when you have a comedian or a content creator or somebody who's disconnected from the political scene.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, but he is demonstrating that he has more, just more of a likability factor than I would have thought.
He's a charismatic guy.
Yeah. I didn't see it before. I'm starting to see it. Amber. More free media tomorrow. We'll catch you then. Thanks for watching.